Hello, and welcome to Once Again Swords. How can I help you today? You're interested in purchasing a sword? Well, we have quite a few to choose from. I'm sure you're probably aware, but I want to tell you, just in case you aren't, this is not a blacksmith shop, so we have not made any of the swords that you see here. Rather, we are a place where people can come and bring swords that they are no longer interested in keeping, and they bring them to us, and they can trade for other swords, or we can resell the swords for them. Occasionally we have scavengers that bring in swords, and we don't ask where they get them from or how they get them, but basically every sword in this shop has a very interesting and intriguing story behind it. So sometimes people buy a sword for the story alone, so that's something to consider when you're purchasing your sword. So what type of sword have you come in for today? We have long blades and short blades and broad blades and thin blades and practice swords and real swords. What can I help you find today? You're interested in a practice sword and a real sword? Okay, well, why don't we start with practice swords? As far as a practice sword, are you interested in a long blade or a short blade? Kind of a standard long blade? Okay, well, I have one in mind, and that would be this one. This is a practice sword that I would highly recommend. Once again, we did not make this, and this was brought in by a scavenger, so we don't actually have the story behind this practice sword, but it is a very nice practice sword. Has a good length of the blade, kind of the standard average blade length, and it is wood, so obviously it does hurt if you get hit by it, but the blade itself is pretty light, so it's not going to hurt as much as if you had a really heavy blade. It does still hurt, so I would recommend not getting hit by it, which of course is the entire point of practicing. But it is nice that it has a lighter blade, but the thing that really sets this practice sword apart is that the hilt is actually quite weighty, and that gives you kind of the feel for a real sword. Sometimes you come across practice swords that have very light hilts. The hilt is made out of the same wood as the blade, so the whole thing is really light, which of course makes it very easy to swing. And the problem with that is that when you're used to swinging a sword that's really light, when you go to swing a real sword, it just kind of changes the flow of your movements, so the practice sword doesn't really prepare you for how you're going to move with a real heavier sword. So that's one of the nice things about this sword, is that it has such a heavy hilt, it feels a little more like a real sword. Obviously you don't get the weight in the blade that you would have on a real sword, but you want to keep your sparring partner safe, but having that extra heavy hilt really does help a bit. You think that sounds like the practice sword for you? Alright then, we won't even go through the other practice swords. We'll just set that one there and get that one ready for you. So, as far as your real blade, do you have anything in mind as far as length or width, or do you just want me to go through a few of varying degrees and see what calls out to you? You just want to go through a few? Okay, that's no problem. Why don't we start with these here. Now these come as a pair, so that's kind of a nice feature. You get two for the price of one. These blades actually belonged to a pirate originally, and the blades are they're not super short, but they're kind of short as far as swords. So they're not quite as short as like a dagger, but they are short swords, and what made them great as short swords was the pirate who originally owned them would keep them on her back, and due to the short length of the blade, she could very quickly just just draw them off of her back. You know, the draw off the back can often be a little bit difficult with a longer sword, so having the shorter blades makes it very quick and easy to just draw them off of the back. Now, for the design themselves, the hilt is solid gold, and then the blade itself is a combination of steel and silver, and it has some beautiful ornate markings on the outer edges of the blade, which makes them very beautiful as well as deadly and functional. They are still quite sharp, so you can use them for battle or chopping vegetables, if you will, but again, they do come as a pair because we wouldn't want to split up a nice pair of unique blades like this, so that's a set to consider. Maybe? Okay. Why don't we just set them over here in the maybe pile? Now, if you're looking for something maybe a little smaller, this one's just a nice little dagger. You know, the blade is less than a foot in length, and it's a solid steel blade. There is no fuller in this blade, simply because the blade is so short, didn't add a lot of extra weight having it be solid. The hilt, again, is solid gold. This one was brought to us by a scavenger, so we're not entirely sure of the story behind this blade, but the blade is in excellent condition. There are very few chips or dings, and there's no rusting along the blade, so someone did a really nice job of taking care of this. Should you choose to purchase this blade, we do also have a sheath that fits it perfectly. It's interesting because the sheath did not actually come with this blade when our scavenger brought it to us. The sheath was something that someone else brought in to sell, but it just happened to fit perfectly on this blade, so we called that very lucky, and we can sell that with this blade. Now, you do not have to take the sheath with the blade. You can just take the blade as is if you don't want a sheath. The sheath is a belt sheath, so you'll wear it around your waist if you would like that. And if you just like the blade itself, you can take that as is as well. But it's just a nice, quick, little short, quick draw blade. If you're in close hand-to-hand combat, it works very nicely, and I will say it's also great for chopping carrots. I use it quite frequently for that myself. So, do you think that is something you'd be interested in? Think it's a little too small for your needs? Okay, well then we'll just set that one right out of the way here. I think maybe you might like to consider this one here. Now this is a full-length sword, obviously, and it's been very well taken care of. This one actually was formerly used by a monster hunter, so this blade is made to battle both men and monsters. The blade itself is made of meteorite, which is a little stronger and more durable than just plain steel, and this will work for any battles with humans or your general run-of-the-mill monsters. It will not do much damage to monsters of a magical nature. You will need a silver sword for that, which we do carry a few of those if you're interested in those as well. But yeah, this one's good for just your general battle with men or monsters. The hilt has been fashioned so that it points downward toward the blade, which gives you a lot of room here to allow for wrist movement, because sometimes when you're in the heat of battle, depending on your particular fighting style, you will need a lot of room to just swing that around. You don't want your own hilt getting in your way, so yes, this has been styled specifically so that it points downward toward the blade, making it kind of a unique, handy feature of this sword. This is also a very beautiful sword because someone has added a brooch to it. This brooch was not originally fashioned with the sword, but someone added it to it. We're not entirely sure the story behind that because we don't always know, what was going on in someone's head when they had a sword that comes to us hundreds of years later, but perhaps it had some magical aspect for the monster hunter, or perhaps it reminded him of someone or something that he didn't want to forget, you know? So, yeah, so that's, someone added that brooch, which just really gives it a decorative aspect as well as functional, you know? It's a functional sword, but has an aesthetically pleasing aspect as well. And the brooch is solid gold as well, which enhances its value if you intend to resell it later. So also a little bit of gold and a jewel on the back. Again, value enhancing, so it's a beautiful sword as well as functional with that spectacular meteorite blade. So for a traditional length sword, this is definitely one of the finest blades in our collection at this time. You think you would like that one? Okay, so we'll just set this over here with your wooden practice sword. Now you said maybe on the pirate blades, the pair of pirate blades, are you interested in those, or do you think you just want the monster hunter's sword? You think you just like the long one? Okay, and would you like me to show you any more, or do you think the practice sword and the full blade sword are all that you'd like? You think that's it for today? Okay, well, why don't we just wrap those up so you don't cut yourself on the way home? Will you be interested in any accessories, sword belts, sheaths, anything like that? Whetstones or sharpening? You think you're set for now? Okay, well then why don't I just wrap these up, keep you from cutting yourself on the blade, and you can stick them on your horse and carriage and be on your merry way, okay? Okay, why don't I wrap those up for you? And if you guys want to see how I made the rest of this costume, then check out my new book, Cosplaying When You're Broke, which is currently available for pre-sale. The links are in the description box.